welcome back to Sheboygan Stories Unhoused and Unheard. I'm Scott Labonte. Today's episode, I'm sitting down with Kathleen again, and she's joining me because it's the topic that we're talking about is something we lived together while we ran Pay It Forward here in Sheboygan. When people talk about those experiencing homelessness, the conversation is often pretty simple. It's about compassion, resources, and helping people get back on their feet, and those things absolutely matter. But there are also parts of this work that are complicated, parts that people don't always see. So today we wanted to talk honestly about some of the realities of this work, the balance between compassion, safety, accountability, and what it actually takes to run a space that serves people well. And just to be clear right up front, this episode isn't about attacking anyone or criticizing anyone for the work that people are trying to do in the community. Running spaces that serve vulnerable populations is incredibly hard work, and anyone stepping up to try to help deserves credit for that. But honest conversations are also very important. Why this conversation matters a lot, actually, and we've probably hit on it a couple times here and there throughout some of the episodes. But recently, we've been having conversations with several of the people in our unhoused community, and something that keeps coming up is that some people aren't going to the warming center. Now, I want to be clear about something here. The warming center exists because people care. It's there to help people stay safe in dangerous weather, and that's a good thing. But in conversations that I've had on the street, some people have told me they don't feel comfortable going there. Some people say that they feel unsafe. Others say that there are things happening inside that make them uneasy. Now, I can't verify every claim someone makes in a conversation like that. But when you hear similar conversations from different people, it does raise an important question. Why would someone choose to stay outside in cold or freezing weather rather than go someplace warm? And that's a question worth exploring. So that's kind of where we're going to go with this today. So, running Pay It Forward taught us a lot about how complicated this work can be. Creating a space that is welcoming is one thing. Creating a space that is both welcoming and safe is something entirely different. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, that makes me actually laugh when you say that, because when we opened on Michigan Ave, we were first timers. I had been doing the day-to-day outreach for
quite a while.
Over 2 years at that point, but it's completely different when you're in your own space and you have to come up with your own rules and your own accountability and your own structure. And we learned very quickly that what I thought would work absolutely did not.
It does.
It did not. I've always been very, very open with people that, like, if you came into Michigan Ave, it was one thing, and if you came into Erie Ave, it was something completely different. Because I learned so many valuable lessons.
We learned some hard lessons.
On Michigan Ave, yes, some super hard lessons. On Michigan Ave. But we were constantly pivoting. We were constantly learning. We were constantly changing what we were doing in that first 6 months to a year. Well, we were constantly changing and pivoting what we were doing.
Even on Erie Ave.
Yeah, all the way through. But it slowed after that first 6 months to a year because we got in a really good rhythm. We were very consistent with our rules. We were very consistent with the consequences.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to be.
We were very consistent with our expectations of the individuals in our center and the accountability.
Right.
For choices that they made inside and outside.
Absolutely.
Our center.
And there needs to be that accountability.
There has to be. You know, we could have two peers that could literally be around the corner duking it out, and they could walk in our door 3 seconds apart from each other. And the one thing I would always tell them is, whatever was going on out there, leave it out there.
That shit
you don't
stays out there.
You don't bring it in our doors. If somebody was at the warming center at night and they were having issues there, the warming center and us, I was used to be really good about giving a heads up, like this is what's coming your way, or this is what we've dealt with all day or all night, vice versa. Just so you were prepared, because there's lots of tensions when they're around each other all the time. But we would always tell them, I don't really care what was going on there.
Right. That's not our space.
Because we weren't there. We don't know what was going on. But you're not allowed to bring it into our space.
No.
I'm more than happy to sit down and talk with you and listen to you. But for you and somebody else to pick up that battle that that came from somewhere else, that just didn't fly. We couldn't do that.
No.
That, and, people would often tell us, like, I always called it romper room.
Right.
Like, what so-and-so was doing last night when they weren't here? And I'd say, no. And to be honest, I really don't care, because I have no control over that.
I don't want to know. Some of the things you just didn't want to know.
I have no control over that. That's their choices. We can discuss accountability for your choices, but it's none of my business what they were doing when they weren't here.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
And if I'm working with them one-on-one on something, it's their business to tell me. It's between the two of us, not on somebody else. I mean, we worked super hard to make our center a space where everyone felt safe. And I think we were really successful at making 96% of our peers feel safe.
Yeah. There was always a couple.
Because you're never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
You're never going to make everybody feel safe and that their needs are met 100%. You're just not.
Right.
But if we didn't have all of those rules that were very clearly on all of our walls and all of our doors and all of our... I mean, we had them everywhere.
And they were upheld. Yes.
If we didn't have all of those rules and the consequences that we adhered to, they knew if they did something, and if it wasn't caught till I caught it on the camera the next time I was looking through some video or whatever, they were going to pay the consequences for it. But that was what also led to you implement that and you be diligent about that. And next thing you know, you're not being the stickler. You're not being the hard ass.
You don't have to.
Because people are respecting the fact that you have those rules. People are respecting the fact that you are going to hold them accountable. Like I've always told our peers, we had the best relationship, and it took a lot of work, but we had the best relationship with the Sheboygan Police Department.
Oh, we sure did.
And like, everybody has history. Everybody does. I always joked, our peers thought that I was...
little goody two-shoes?
Just, this little, like, I was that 50-year-old white woman. What am I going to learn from her? Well, that young man was very shocked when I turned around and said, well, I have a mugshot that's probably not any different than yours. So,
right.
Hey, did I rob a place? No. Did I get drunk and wreck a car and leave the scene of my own accident? Yes. I did not hurt anybody else.
Just took out a fire hydrant. Just
myself and my car. I took out a fire hydrant. I was 18 years old in the UP. Anyway, I have a mugshot because of it. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. You have no idea what it's been through. I mean, they had no idea anything about who I was or what led us to where we are today.
Right, and why we did the things we did.
Right, and why we do what we do. It's like, because I would always tell our peers, some of the things that I could do for them to help guide them, like the ones who struggle with addiction, and I was able to do that for them, but I wasn't able to do it for my own daughter.
Right.
You know, but you can't just tell people how they're supposed to behave and not have very real conversations about who you are, where you come from,
Right.
why you do the things you do. And you have to, regardless of your personal feelings, you have to have that accountability. Because otherwise they're just running amok and nobody's safe.
Right. It's that structure and boundaries that makes it safe.
Right. You know, our peers knew. Sorry, I have squirrel moments. I start on one thing and go into 12 others. The police department thing, they loved. Our peers knew when they filled out their intake paperwork. You know, we ask, have you ever been to jail? Do you have a criminal background? Do you have a PO? Do you whatever? They ask all of that. And I would tell our peers, like, if you knew they were being dishonest, it's like, I mean, unless there's a warrant out for you because you committed some atrocious felony, I'm not going to turn you in. Mm-mm. I'm going to talk with you about how you need to take accountability for your actions and be responsible for that and be accountable for your choices, which means turning yourself in.
Right.
And dealing with that, because then you can't make changes going forward without that. But here's the big kicker. I may not turn you in 9 out of 10 times, but we are not the place for you to hide.
No, we're not going to protect you if they come.
We are not the place for you to hide, because they are freely allowed to come in here. Mm-hmm. The main reason for the police department being encouraged to freely come into our center at any time, was to normalize that relationship.
Right.
That just because you got in trouble with a certain officer at 6 o'clock that morning or at noon the day before doesn't mean when they come in today in the afternoon for coffee or to say hi, that's even going to be brought up. Right. They're just going to have a, hey, how's it going? What are you doing today? Is there something I can help you with?
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's what we needed. That's the relationship that we wanted built. And from what I hear from our peers, that relationship isn't being encouraged anywhere else.
Right.
And and I don't know that firsthand. So
like we said, we can't confirm any of that because we're not there.
It's just the same story from multiple sources.
And not all in the same conversation.
Right.
It'd be different if there was a group of us sitting around and everybody was like, oh yeah, what he said or what she said, or, but it's not. It's different conversations at completely different times.
Sometimes
it's usually a recurring theme.
Yeah, sometimes it's a stop on the street, like if I'm going into the nature store, or if I stop in at the library, or
they reach out to us because they still feel the need to tell us absolutely everything.
I've always said that through all of this. I hear everything, whether I want to or not.
Right.
Whether I want to or not. Somebody's going to come and tell me.
Right. There needs to be that accountability. There needs to be the boundaries. There needs to be structure. There needs to be consistency. If you want everybody to feel safe. We talk a lot about our rules and the boundaries we had and the consequences we had. If somebody came in intoxicated, aggressive, bringing things into the space that made somebody feel safe, that affects everybody.
Correct.
Yeah, and if people start to not feel safe, they're not going to come.
Correct.
And we saw that.
Yes.
We saw, and we realized we needed to make changes. We needed to make sure that it was a safe space for everybody. Sometimes people think that helping means removing all rules. Quite the contrary. It's those rules that keep everybody safe and everybody accountable. But that's also where it gets complicated. Because compassion matters, and there has to be compassion in there somewhere also. Mm-hmm. with that compassion, as Kathleen had talked about a little bit ago, as we had mentioned often, the accountability matters. When we ran the center, it wasn't just about offering a cup of coffee or a place to sit. We had conversations about goals. We had talked about budgeting. We had conversations about employment. We talked about the steps it takes to start changing your situation. And from what I hear and what I see, and again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not trying to target anybody. Those conversations aren't happening.
No, but I will say what I've said before. I will say what I say every time to our peers, or even some of our previous supporters who overlap with other organizations. Just because things are done differently at another organization doesn't mean that they're not supporting their mission.
Right.
We all have different missions.
Right.
We all have different ways of doing things. Like our peers, when our center was open, our peers would come in and tell us stuff and be like, Miss Kathleen, you need to change that. And I'm like, well, I can't control what goes on.
Not our place.
At somebody else's organization. I can let them know if you have a specific problem with a volunteer or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know, I can relay that information, but then what they do with that information is their business.
Right. We have no control over it.
Yeah, we don't control what other people do. Like I used to tell, I'm not as powerful as you think I am. I'm just not. It's not a thing. But here's the thing. Regardless of organization, status, people, as human beings who need to or want to make changes in our lives, or we want to help others make changes in their lives, just putting a roof over their head with no accountability changes nothing.
Right.
I mean, it keeps them warm and it gets them fed, but you have to be super honest and not ignore behaviors or choices that are keeping them stuck where they are.
Right. And I get, like you had mentioned just a little bit ago, organizations go according to their missions.
Right.
And other organizations, maybe that's not their mission. Their mission isn't to work on those things. It's to provide a shelter from the elements, get them off the streets in cold weather. And I get that is huge. I don't, as far as I know, I don't think there's really any organization right now that's doing that. That has really stepped up to work on those changes and the accountability. And
no, that was us, and that was why we did it,
right?
Because it wasn't
and that's why we were
provided
successful
anywhere else.
doing it, because we did that, and our peers knew that. That's not saying that everybody that walked through that door, that was their sole purpose, was not to change their life. We had several that were perfectly content living the way they were and wanted no part of ever changing. But they wanted the space to come in, relax, unwind, be out of the elements, and just have some great conversation, maybe a cup of coffee.
Correct.
But the ones that did want that help, we were there. And we worked aggressively on it. We had those conversations, those hard conversations that most people don't have with them, or many people, they skirt around them, and I get that because, as we mentioned, that's not the mission. I don't know. It's just tough to see. Strictly my opinion, and that holds no weight, no credibility whatsoever, probably. And now I forgot where I was going with that.
Squirrel moments.
Big time.
Squirrel moments.
Yeah, it'll come back to me. No good. Sorry about that. It just gone. Partially old age, partially just squirrel moments.
Right.
Now, we kind of hit on a little bit about people avoiding the warming center or warming centers in general. And that's not something that's just a local thing. If you watch.
Yeah, right. We're not
Again,
targeting
we're not pointing fingers.
anybody.
We're not being, accusing anybody. We're not. It is a nationwide thing.
Correct.
We follow a lot of different podcasts, I follow different YouTube channels, this and that, about the homeless community, and it's not just here. It's
Well,
everywhere.
I mean, like if we related it locally, it's not just the warming center. There are peers who refuse to go to Salvation Army.
Right.
Whether it's from past history with them or just some preconceived notion in their head or their own feelings or their past trauma. There are individuals who will not go to the refuge to try to get into the transitional living. There are, so I mean, when we say warming center, we're not being specific to the warming center.
No, it's any place that gets
an overnight shelter.
our peers off the streets and out of the elements.
Yeah.
We're just going to refer as a warming center. It could be any one of them. So again, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not trying to accuse anybody. As you had said, maybe it's past trauma. It could be conflicts with somebody that's there.
Well, and for some people, it's, I know that we had peers in the past that it was their own anxiety from past trauma that didn't allow them to be in that room. Like if there's 70 individuals in there, it's too many people for them to deal with, So sometimes places will work with them to get them, off to the side on their own a little more so they feel safer. But there's just so much that goes into it. And I just think that the easiest way to say it is all the way around. Consistency is key. Mm-hmm. Consistency and transparency.
Oh, absolutely.
To the community. Like all your volunteers or all of your staff, all of it needs to be the same. Not like the behaviors from, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to word it.
You all have to be on the same page.
The treatment from the people running it needs to be consistent across the board.
Yes.
Not
picking, choosing who gets what consequences or what reactions because, you like that person better than the other one.
It's funny because our peers learned that because they all thought that Scott was like this big pushover and they were getting away with all kinds of stuff just because he was quieter than I was. Boy, did they learn the hard way that was not true.
I was quiet.
It's not true.
I usually didn't say much, but I saw everything. I paid attention to everything that happened in that center. And when something required my attention, required me to step up, and they found out very quickly that I wasn't the pushover that they thought I was. And to a few, that was quite the surprise. We heard about it afterwards when people went up to wife and were like, wow, dude, we didn't know that. But it all worked. But you have to have that consistency. You have to be straight up across the board saying this is what's going to happen. I don't care if you were there, if Kate was there, if Apple, anybody was there. This is what it was.
Right.
The rules didn't change because you or I weren't there.
Correct.
So that tells us kind of simply having a space, a roof over your head isn't enough. People need to feel safe. They need to feel accepted. And I know that's a tough thing to do. That takes a lot of work. With that comes another layer, I guess, to all of this that makes these conversations even more important right now. We're running end of March. Warming Center, the Warming Center, and I am referencing the Warming Center at St. Luke's, won't be open forever. It closes April 15th. And when that happens, people don't just disappear. They're still here. And they're still trying to figure out where to go, how to stay safe, and how to get through each day. So the need doesn't change. It doesn't go away.
Correct. And that's something that people don't always think about. Like a warming center is temporary by design. It's to get you through the worst weather
Right.
of the year.
And we do appreciate how much they've expanded their operating hours.
Oh, hell yeah. When we first started doing Pay It Forward, like sharing space and stuff, I think they were open for like 7 weeks in January and February with the deep freeze. So, I mean, it's really grown since then, and we're super grateful for that. Our peers are super grateful for that. But when Pay It Forward was open, we watched, and the warming center watched on the other side, the spiral. Like last year, they saw and dealt with the spiral of Pay It Forward was closing. And where were they going to go during the day? Where were they going to get the help with all of the things that we assisted with at Pay It Forward? Where were they going to get those conversations? Where were they going to get that acceptance? Where were they going to get that safe space to be? And, we tried. I tried last summer to provide that through temporary space, which we're still super grateful for Salvation Army for providing, but it was not the same. We could provide the space, but not the safety that they needed to continue to work on the things that we were working on. And we were never able to find a space downtown, still haven't been able to find a space downtown that could happen. So, like I said, a warming center is it's a seasonal thing. That's the best way to phrase it. It's a seasonal thing. But the needs of those individuals don't go away. Like we watched the year before, the warming center's closing. Or it's 6 weeks before the warming center opens and it's freezing outside and it's wet and it's snowing already. And so I've always said we found our greatest successes when we were open all day and the warming center was open all day.
Right. It met the needs of during the daytime. They knew where they were going. They had a place to go at night to get a good night's sleep. So during the day they could stay focused. They knew what they had to work on, not wondering, okay, where am I sleeping tonight? How safe am I going to be? Is it going to rain? Is it going to snow?
And we had individuals that went both ways. Those that didn't feel safe at the warming center had us to come to during the day. So it made it easier for them to get through the night, knowing I have someplace to go tomorrow.
But there were also peers that would go to the warming center.
But there were peers who very rarely came to our center. Some of them didn't come to our center at all. Some of them couldn't come to our center because of our rules. And they, in turn, had the warming center to go to at night. That was their
So it worked.
place. So it worked. But, you have to... It's tightrope.
It is. And we talk about it like when spaces like the warming center close for the season, it puts even more pressure on the rest of the community.
Correct.
It puts pressure on outreach efforts, on local resources, on people just trying to survive. And if somebody already doesn't feel comfortable going into those spaces when they're open, it becomes even harder once they're gone. And I get the whole funding thing, and I get, budgeting thing.
Right.
It is not possible to stay open all the time. It is not, funding just doesn't allow it. Maybe it's staffing. Maybe it's, for whatever reason. But that's why we have these conversations. That's why we talk about these things. We like to be real, honest, upfront, like it or lump it, I guess.
Right. We have big opinions and don't really know how to keep our noses out of everything.
Right.
So.
And if there's ever something, we welcome conversations. We welcome debate. If you want to, if there's something that we talk about that maybe you don't agree with or you have a different point to, let us know. We can address it. Maybe come sit down with us. We'll sit down and have a talk.
Hell yeah. I welcome that.
Absolutely. I think that would be amazing. We welcome any kind of input. And if you'd like to come sit on the other side of this microphone with us, or just me or just Kathleen, absolutely bring it on. We would make that happen.
I'm always up for a good conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we can have differing opinions. We can come from totally opposite ends of the spectrum, but we can have adult conversations.
Right. Yeah, because this isn't about just...
It's not about me and my feelings.
No. And we just like to put it out there, what we see, what we hear, like
Right.
we had mentioned a few other times previously. We can't confirm nor, refute these because we're not there. And it isn't about just one building or one program. It's about what happens before, during, and after those doors are open, and what kind of community we want this to be when they close. And that's why we have these conversations. April 15th isn't the end of the need. It's just the end of one resource. And how do we fix that? How do we step up to continue to meet that need? And that's, I guess, another aspect of this conversation, the cost of helping. Trust, transparency, and the cost of helping. And people don't always talk about that. And we hit on that just a little bit ago with the budgets and the financial side of it. Running any kind of center, whether it's a day center, shelter, warming center, costs money. Lots of money. That stuff isn't free.
Right.
Isn't cheap. We learned that. We had amazing people that would donate to us regularly. We appreciate that. We could have done none of what we did without the support of our community and the people that donated to us. And I would imagine that's the same with any kind of organization that does this type of work.
Right.
You rely on the donations. You rely on the support of the community and the people who back what you do. There's utilities, supplies, insurance, maintenance. All those things add up, and nobody really gives those a thought, especially our peers, because they're just there. Some of them probably thought it just miraculously showed up every day. There, our counters were fully stocked every morning when they came in. The coffee was always hot. The fridge was always full of stuff they needed. There was always sleeping bags or socks or whatever they may need was always there. And that stuff just didn't miraculously.
No, they always used to ask me when I was in the office and I'd have the do not disturb sign up. By the way, that do not disturb sign was just decor. They'd knock on the door
Nobody
anyway.
paid attention
Well, what
to
are
it
you doing
anyway.
in there? I'm like, I'm in a meeting, or I have to get this XYZ done and get it turned in, or I need to get these donation receipts out to donors. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I answer. They're like, you're the boss. That was the thing. You're the boss.
we had
and
a
I'm
board.
like, I have a board of directors and the federal government that I have to answer to. So,
Right.
There's a lot that it doesn't run itself.
No, all of the stuff that went on behind the scenes that our peers knew
Right.
nothing
like,
about.
all of the places that we presented to get donors, to get support,
Right.
to get volunteers, it doesn't.
There was a whole
run
other
itself.
job
Yeah.
behind the job.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I get every organization structures things a little differently. But one thing that's always important in the nonprofit sector is trust. People have to trust what you're doing. Nonprofits rely on their communities. And we just mentioned that. We rely on the donors. We rely on the community support. We rely on, the money, the supplies, volunteers, people believing in your mission. They're not going to support you if they don't believe in your mission. And thankfully, we started complete nothings. Nobody here knew us. Again, and I know we've hit on this multiple times in previous.
Let me rephrase that. We were not complete nothings. We were just unknowns.
Well, that's what I meant by the nothings. We're not from.
We were just unknown.
Yeah, not from here. Nobody knew who we were. All of a
Words
sudden,
matter.
words are hard.
Words matter.
Yeah. We show up out of the blue, people that have no idea who we are. And then all of a sudden we're doing this and we're looking for support and we're asking our community to back us. And it took some time, but we proved our mission. We proved what we could do, what we were capable of. And it showed by the building support of the community. You know, the places we talked, places we presented to, the people we met along the way. And we met some pretty amazing people along the way.
Absolutely.
And when you have that support of the community, transparency matters. They need to know where their support is going, whether it be financial support, whether it be, you know, goods or clothing, food, whatever it is that they want to know where it's going, what their donation is being used for. And they deserve to know these things. They deserve to know that what they're doing is truly helping the people that they're intended to serve.
Correct. You know, I've always said from day one, you know, when we ran Pay It Forward, like right from the start of the Facebook page, before we were even a nonprofit, everything we were able to do was because of our community.
Whether it be from the bin on our front porch
Right.
to, you know, whatever
Right.
it was because of our
everything
community.
that we were able to do was because of our community. You know, the donated food, the supplies that were brought, the volunteers that stepped in to help. You know, like when we did our rules and consequences and stuff, our volunteers and some of our peers had a lot of say in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Did a lot of input because
But we wanted that input.
because you don't come up with those things by yourself.
Because it wasn't just about us.
Correct. You know, we needed to involve the people who we were serving. But you know, I also said once we became a nonprofit, we were always transparent right from day one. I'm a very transparent person. I'll tell you anything, including about my personal life.
Right. I always say
So-
don't ask questions you don't want answered because
Yeah.
I'll tell you whatever you want to, you know,
Yeah.
whatever you ask.
But I always tell people because there was some speculation a couple of months ago. There was some, you know, like we hear things from our peers, we hear things from other community members too. There was a lot of speculation about, okay, Pay It Forward's closed. Where did their money go? I looked at their $9.90 from 2024 because 2025 is not even filed
because-
yet. But I looked at their $9.90 from 2024 and they have $50,000 in their checking account. No. You have to pay rent. You have to
And
buy
bills.
supplies. You have to pay bills. We, at one point...
That stuff isn't cheap, you know.
No, and at one point we were the recipients that we were very open about a generous donation, which from a donor, which allowed us to expand.
Oh, yeah.
On Erie Ave. We didn't know then that we'd be closing in 6 months
No,
or
we-
4 months or whatever it was. But
We wouldn't have accepted it had we known at that
no,
point.
yeah, we wouldn't have expanded. But anyway, through that donation, we did our amazing expansion, and our peers got to experience our Zen Den, and
Right.
oh, that room was my
And it was
everything.
everybody's. Anybody that went in there.
Right. And there was a portion of that money that was still sitting in our checking account.
Right. When we officially...
Well, it was sitting in there because through all of the temporary stuff, it was sitting in there with the understanding with the donor. And there were not stipulations on me that I couldn't do anything without the
No.
donor's consent. That was not a thing.
He had... Yeah, it was donated.
Communication was very important to the
Right.
donor and to myself. So with that money still sitting in our checking account, $12,000. I mean, we're transparent.
Full transparency.
So it was $12,000 sitting in our checking account. I reached out to the donor back before we made any public announcements
Right. That we were officially terminating everything.
I reached out to the donor and specifically asked if it was okay for us, when we were done wrapping up all of our financial stuff, to give that money to the warming shelter here in town, to the warming center at St. Luke's. And the donor was 100% in support of that.
Absolutely. And we reached out to the donor for that because we knew it still helped the peers that it was intended
Correct.
to help
Well,
when we received that money.
Just like all of the stuff out of the storage units.
Right.
I mean, everything, the majority, everything that was specifically for our peers, like, went to the warming center and to the refuge, to transitional living. We did give to other organizations, but the stuff that needed to be available to our peers for their purpose,
It was intended for our
and
peers.
for their immediate benefit, went to those two places. That money, that was some very apparently public conversations and scuttlebutt and whatever. We're not rich. There wasn't all kinds of money in our checking account. And for a few that asked, I gave very detailed
Where the money went.
financial
Because
accounting
full transparency, 100%.
of where that goes. Well, that's what I started with. As a nonprofit, you have to be 100% transparent.
You do.
Because anybody from the public can come in
and ask for your financials.
and ask for your financials. They can ask, I mean, you just need to be transparent. It's how you get funding. It's how you get whatever. So I know that there are going to be people listening to that were part of those monetary speculations. And that money went to the warming center in December.
Yes.
So, like, in the middle of all of this scuttlebutt about
Right.
the hours opening at Hope Church, whatever, we said through all of that, we support them no matter what they're doing, whether we're part of it or not, whatever. It's irrelevant. It was about what was best for our peers, and that is where that money went. That is where it went. And I think if I look at our checking account now, I think we have $130 left.
Yes, and some
And I'm
odd change.
still waiting for our last accountant bill, which is probably going to be $125. So I'm going to buy somebody a bag of lollipops after the accountant's paid off.
Right. Yeah, there needs to be that transparency. There needs to be that trust so people know where their donation, where with what they're doing is how it's being used.
Right. You know, okay, I'm going to cut you off. My biggest piece of advice is if you question something that is going on at an organization, no matter where you live, I'm not just talking about specific to Sheboygan,
Right.
because people from all over the world listen to this podcast.
Amazingly, yes.
Which is really cool. If you have questions about an organization near you and stuff that is going on there and things that you don't, here you go. Walk in and ask some questions.
Right. Ask to see the financials. Ask to see where this donation goes to, how this is helping the people that it serves.
Well, and ask about how they run things.
Right.
Ask about their rules. Ask about their expectations. Ask about their
consequences.
Yeah, ask questions. Ask them questions.
Right.
Because people come to me and I don't know how to answer that because I don't make the rules.
Right. You know, as I was saying, you know, there needs to be that transparency. There needs to be that trust. And when that trust exists, amazing things can happen. And it does, but it needs to be there.
Absolutely. Sorry, my dogs think that
Right.
indoor-outdoor is a big game right now.
Right,
'cause
you know,
we're sitting by the patio doors.
They open up the door just for him to go sit outside for 3 seconds, looking back in and asking to come back in. Right?
They're like, shit, it's cold out here. Let me back in the house.
And kind of, I guess, tying off of that, kind of on a different tangent, I guess, kind of on a tying in, but not, I guess. If there's one thing that we learned through all of this is that there is no, and we hit on this a lot in this podcast, there is no single organization that can solve homelessness. Not here, not anywhere.
No, absolutely not.
It is not. It takes collaboration. It takes communication. It takes partnership between outreach organizations, nonprofits, law enforcement, businesses, and community members. It takes all of that to work on this, to try to solve it.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's, again, why we have these conversations. That's why this podcast exists. it was brought out to really try to give voices, try to answer the questions that people wonder about, and have the conversation that people want to know but don't want to ask, I guess, because some of the conversations are hard, and I get that. And some people may not know where to go to ask those questions, so this was brought about to try to help with that. So it kind of, when all of that, the collaboration, communication, partnerships, when all of those pieces work together, people get the support they need. And when they don't, the people fall through the cracks. And that was kind of doing a complete,
which is where we started, because we watched them falling through the cracks.
When we started the Facebook page, and we saw where the cracks were, we saw where the deficits were, the people were falling through and not getting the support they needed. That's why we came into existence, and it takes everybody, and I applaud everybody that's still in the game, that's still out there in the trenches fighting.
Oh, I still get the messages.
Oh, we do. They
come back to the table.
Right.
Come back to the table.
Yep. When are you guys coming back? We miss you. We need you. I get that from local law enforcement officers.
Right.
I know quite a few outside of here in different organizations.
I get it from other organizations. I get it from different housing coalition members. I get it from peers. I get it from, and the most I can say is,
if the city would step out of the way enough to let us. No, it is what it is.
I know. I know.
They were primarily the reason that we're done.
Well, I'm just in a season of, I'm tired.
That too.
That fight, it was different when we had our own location.
We were, I don't want to say oblivious to everything, but we were.
Well, we could do what we needed to do, and we could be part of the meetings that I needed to be part of, but we could do what we did. And it seemed like once we lost that physical structure, other people's opinions and walls were able to cause problems that they couldn't when we had a space.
Yes, right.
Not when we were like
walls
at the mercy of others.
Walls and stuff that prevented us from securing another space.
Right, and I'm sorry, but we're human beings, and I'm tired.
We're just trying to help, and well, like you said, we got tired of fighting.
One person can't do it by themselves.
Right, takes a community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to this before we kind of wrap this up?
Even with all of that crap, it's super hard. And no, I'm not alluding to anything. It's super hard. Like, I stepped out of everything.
Yeah. Just
in January, throughout the month of January, because I kept keeping my toes
in there just enough.
In, but not in.
Right.
And it just ended up being a very unhealthy thing for me personally. Because it takes over.
Well, that and at risk of sounding like an asshole, I guess, why ask for a seat at a table that you're not wanted?
Well, but it's not even at a table that
Yeah,
no.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight to sit at a table that people don't want me at. Plain and simple. I don't beg. I ask once or twice. If that doesn't work, move on. And that's kind of what happened. That's the reality of it. My favorite saying, like it or lump it. But anyway, I'll stop on that. But,
I'm not.
Yeah, we're not going to go into that.
I'm not going there.
But anyway, in closing this, because we've been here long enough now, I guess, and I do appreciate you listening. Helping people who are struggling with poverty, trauma, addiction, mental health challenges, all of those things is incredibly complicated work. No matter who's doing it, it's complicated. But complicated doesn't mean impossible. It just means we have to be willing to have these honest conversations. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about buildings or programs. It's about the people. It's about the people and how we choose to show up for each other as a community. And you've all proven that you can do that. You've all proven that you do that. And again, we appreciate absolutely everything. So thank you for listening to this episode of Sheboygan Stories Unhoused and Unheard. If you found any value in this episode, follow the podcast on whatever platform. It's on pretty much all of them. It's on YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, you name it, it's out there. iHeartRadio. Whatever platform you listen on, and consider sharing it with somebody else. These conversations matter. And I'm going to keep having these conversations. So as always, keep your heart open and pay it forward.